The fourth generation of My Little Pony, entitled Friendship is Magic, first aired on the Hub Network on October 10th, 2010. Shortly after its release, the show became a rousing success, in particular with a group that referred to themselves as bronies. These individuals were older than the general target demographic of the My Little Pony series all years prior, and nobody really knew why. None of the older generations had ever been able to stir interest in an older audience like this generation did. But why is that? What made Generation 4 of My Little Pony so special? I'm obviously not going to be able to mention every single person that worked on the show that was important to it, but I want to get into the people that I remember personally and that really had an effect on the quality of this show. So, first off, I obviously have to mention the biggest, most influential person that made G4 a success, and that is Lauren Faust. Prior to working on Friendship is Magic, she had already been working on incredible things, such as films like Cats Don't Dance and The Iron Giant, to shows like Codename Kids Next Door, The Powerpuff Girls, and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Lauren was critical to the success of Generation 4, in my opinion, and not even in my opinion, that's just a given. She was head showrunner, and it shows just the quality and really the first two seasons that she worked on. Those were the catalysts for the explosion of Generation 4 in general. She did have a lot of talent to work with, though. And the next person that I want to mention is Daniel Ingram. I don't want to get into it too much because music will also get its own point entirely, but Daniel's work in Friendship is Magic is absolutely incredible. From the audio tracks that are just instrumentals that didn't have any vocals, to the fully vocal songs, to the almost musical numbers that he produced, they were all, I think, critical to the success of this generation. Once we get into the cast and the voice actors, you see just how high of quality the VAs they got for this generation also were. Heading the entire show was Tara Strong, who is in so many things, it will make your head spin. You have Tabitha St. Germain being Rarity and also being Luna a little bit later. You have Ashley Ball being Applejack and Rainbow Dash. You have Andrea Libman being Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy. And that was just the main six. That was already incredible levels of talent with just the main cast. But then you also had side characters. Kathleen Barr voiced Trixie, and then she voiced Chrysalis when we got Chrysalis. You also had CMC is kind of dependent on how you view the CMC, if they were main cast or if they were secondary characters. But Michelle Krieber, Madeline Peters, and Claire Corlett were all incredible voice actors in their own right. You had a little bit later, John Delancey came in and voiced Discord, and that's amazing. John Delancey is incredible. He's in so many things. You had Kelly Sheridan a bit later coming in as Starlight Glimmer, and you had Rebecca Schwachet coming in as, well, she was there still, but she was voicing Sunset Shimmer. The quality of not only the cast, but the people who worked behind the scenes, all of them, and the care that went in from all of them. If you look at old videos of cons and things like that, where they went to meet fans and such, the heart and the care from the people that made Gen 4 is so incredibly high and so impressive that it is one of the main, if not the main contributors as to why Generation 4 succeeded. I am a dumb idiot. I forgot to mention Nicole. Nicole Oliver is the voice of Princess Celestia, and I could not post this video with a clean conscience without mentioning her. I love Celestia. She is so important to Gen 4, and her VA is the one who brought her to life. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the story of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic is perfect, because it's not. There's no way anyone can consider this entire story that spans 9 seasons, 200 plus episodes, a movie, specials, a side story with Equestria Girls. Like, nobody in the world should consider this story perfect. I love this story, but even I will admit that it has many flaws. However, I've run into some people, some alleged fans of Generation 4, who say that the overarching story of Friendship is Magic, Twilight's story, is bad, and that blows my mind. I don't see how you could possibly think the story, the overarching story, all of the openers and closers could be bad. Some of them are written poorly, but the overall story is an incredible 9-year spanning epic, basically. Let's take a look. In Season 1, we're introduced to a stubborn girl who doesn't want to make friends and only wants to learn. At the direction of her mentor, she makes friends, and in doing so, saves her land and saves her mentor's sister. In Season 2, that girl learns just how important her friendships are to her and that they're worth fighting for. Then we get to see the extended family of that girl and how they are also very important to the overall fabric of Equestria. The originally stubborn girl also learns that sometimes stubbornness isn't bad and it's steadfastness, and she needs to trust herself at times. In Season 3, the girl learns that self-sacrifice and humbleness is very important, and this leads to her becoming an Alicorn princess. In Season 4, the girl gains the keys to her own future home, and she's more accepted by the rulers of the nation, fueling the idea that she possibly will become the leader of the nation soon. She also eventually gains her own castle and home. In Season 5, she meets an equal and a rival who she eventually turns to her side through the power of friendship that she has learned since Season 1. In Season 6, that rival, now the girl's student, has to face the mistakes of her past and the mistakes that she has made over her life. Her student is then thrust into the position of savior of Equestria, and she saves the land. In Season 7, we then have the student showing the teacher, or teaching the teacher, the girl from the beginning, the lessons that she has learned from her, and showing that they are now learning from each other. In Season 8, the girl opens up a school of friendship so that she can teach the lessons that she has learned over the entire series to everyone in the land of Equestria, thus making a better place. Then, the students that she is teaching end up saving Equestria when it is threatened by another villain in the form of Cozy Glow. And finally, in Season 9, the previous rulers are going to retire and promote the girl to become the leader of Equestria, the ruler, the princess, and that's where she ends up sitting. Now, for sure, this story has flaws. This story isn't perfect, but is it good? Yes. Everything from Season 1 to Season 9, as far as the overarching story, is a continuation and builds on all of it. It is a good story, and that's another one of the reasons why this generation succeeded so well and lasted for 9 years. Now, characters are crucial to make your story interesting. I think that most people will agree that an enticing or interesting character will usually draw in someone, and then the story will keep the person there. With My Little Pony, there is no shortage of characters that are incredibly enduring. I already mentioned the main characters and the voice cast and all of those interesting characters, but you also have an overwhelming amount of villains that are interesting in this show. Not all perfect. Not all of the villains are perfect. Chrysalis is the best, and you have other very interesting villains, and then you have some bad villains, like the Pony of Shadows. On top of the villains, you also have background ponies. Characters like Derpy, characters like Lyra and Bonbon, characters like Octavia and Vinyl, characters like Dr. Hooves. There are so many interesting background ponies, and the development and the care that the background ponies got and the built up lore and the more interesting aspects fleshed out, that continued the fandom and continued to make the canon and the show itself thrive. And then you had interesting characters that were repeated characters that weren't necessarily in the background, and they weren't necessarily side characters, but they appeared every so often. Characters like Gilda, characters like Coloratura, characters like Autumn Blaze, who I know only appeared once but was incredibly interesting, characters like Moondancer and Minuet. There are so many interesting characters in G4 that not only got development within the show, but were so interesting that the fandom took them and made them fleshed out and even more deep. And that made even background characters and side characters more enduring and caused the entire generation to endure for even longer and be more interesting. So, fun fact, that gif of Pinkie Pie playing the instruments is literally what got me into the entire fandom of Generation 4 of Friendship is Magic. I'd never been a My Little Pony person before that. I think the old gens are a bit more geared towards the target demographic and less so for everyone. And I had no interest in watching Generation 4. But I kept seeing gifs of the show, and I was ignoring them and ignoring them and ignoring them as much as I could. And for the maybe 100th time I saw that Pinkie Pie gif, and I said, you know what? Forget it. I'll give the show a chance. It's probably going to be garbage anyways, and then I'll just have been done with it, and I won't be curious, and that's what started my entire interest in the show. And the animation and the art style of a cartoon is probably the most important thing that attracts viewers. You need your show to look interesting or unique or something that will draw people who just see it and are interested just based on visuals. And Generation 4 of My Little Pony, to this day, in my opinion, and probably in a lot of people's opinion, is one of the best looking shows that has ever been created. Cartoons especially. I think that this show looks spectacular. Never in all 9 seasons does the quality of the animation or the art ever go down. It only goes up. Everything looks better. The animations themselves become more fluid. The artists and the animation team did an incredible job, and I can't really say anything other than that is one of the things that kept people coming back, was to see the visuals and to enjoy them. So we've gone over the visuals of G4 and the audio in the sense of the voice acting. But I think another aspect of G4 is just as important as the other two, and that is this man's contribution. I never really knew how important songs and music were in cartoons until I watched Generation 4 of My Little Pony. Daniel Ingram did such an incredible job with basically all of the sound design and all of the musical aspects of Friendship is Magic that if his work was missing from this series, I can surely say this series would not be as successful or as good as it is. From instrument-only songs like the Cutie Mark Crusaders Go Crusading theme, which I'm sure you're hearing in your head right now if you know the song, to vocalized songs, The amount of work and effort that Daniel put in is just incredible. And I want to talk about some of the songs specifically that I think contributed to the overall success of this series as a whole. So I obviously can't talk about every single song in Generation 4 because there's dozens, but I want to get into a couple of genres or types of songs that were incredibly important to the success of Generation 4. Good story songs. So stuff like Winter Wrap Up, Art of the Dress, Find a Pet, Apples to the Core, Pony I Wanna Be. These were all really, really, really good songs in the context of the show to expand upon the episodes. They weren't needed necessarily. You could have just shown Rarity making dresses for Art of the Dress. You could have just shown Twilight doing her thing, trying to search for her job for Winter Wrap Up. You could have just had Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy talking about finding a pet instead of making it into an entire musical number. But they went above and beyond with these songs, and Daniel did an incredible job making them really, really, really good. Then you had uplifting songs. Songs like You'll Play Your Part, songs like the Smile Song, A True True Friend, Find the Music in You, The Magic Inside, and Flawless. All of these songs are morals. They are for us to take into our heart and apply in our real lives. They are messages telling us we're special, messages telling us that being happy is important, messages telling us what a real friend is. They, again, are not needed or required. They just make the overarching message of My Little Pony even more effective. We also got fun songs like A Kieran Tale and On the Road to Friendship. Both are arguably also good story songs, but they're so fun and upbeat and happy that I had to give them their own little classification. We got epic songs like This Day Aria and Spectacle, which are both a bit higher in what seems to be production quality and therefore were a lot more... Well, Spectacle is really short, but I really like it. This Day Aria is something else. It's, I think, in my opinion, one of the greatest songs in cartoons ever. The production quality, the singing, everything in that song is amazing. We even got a love song, You're in My Head Like a Catchy Song, by Pear. That song adds to that episode so much. It's such a cute part of that episode and again would be sorely missed from it. And of course I can't mention songs without mentioning Weird Al. The fact that we got Weird Al is incredible. Super Duper Party Pony, The Goof Off, The Last Laugh. These were all incredible. Weird Al is an icon. He will always be an icon, and his work is top of the line, and he gave the same amount here as he did to all of his original works. Or, I guess, not original, his parody works. All in all, the music that Daniel Ingram produced is pretty timeless, I think, and it extended even further than the boundaries of the show. Not only was the music in the show something that bolstered it and made it even more renowned, but it crossed over into my next point. Now, when I say the fans, I don't mean the bronies. The bronies were obviously an important part of the fandom, but when I say the fans, I mean everyone who liked Generation 4. I mean the youngest child to the oldest adult and everything in between. A show cannot persist and endure this many years after being over and continue to thrive with fan fiction, with videos on YouTube, with music that we're still getting on a regular basis. A show can't do that without fans of the show. And whether that be the young children who watched then and are grown now and are still into it, to the young children who watch it now because people show it to them, to everyone. From people like Scribbler, who are still regularly posting comics and voice work and stories and just everything from the fandom, and still making videos to bring attention to Gen 4, to people like Prince Whatever, who's still making ridiculously good music to this day based around Generation 4 and Generation 5 too. He delves into some Generation 5 stuff, to YouTubers like Cosmia's Stash, who, as far as I can understand, gets stuff from China that they produce in China and moves it to here so that we can see it with translations and stuff, because Gen 4 is apparently still really, really big in China, which is great for us who want to see stuff from another perspective, like the Chinese fans. Without the fans, G4 never would have become the phenomenon that it did. And that leads to my last point. So for the last part of this video, I wanted to just give my honest thoughts and my whole intentions for making this video without too much editing or anything. So I'm going to kind of do this like free form. So probably a lot of likes and ums. When I made my last video about G5 and why it failed, I got a lot of comments. A lot of comments. And one stuck out to me. I don't really remember it word for word, but it was something along the lines of G4 wasn't lightning in a bottle, and it wasn't really special. It was just a solid show, and people liked it. And I really thought about that for a long time, because I was like, is there a bias here, and was G4 just nothing special and it was a really solid show? Or was it actually special? And I got to thinking of the various aspects that I explained in this video. The voice actors all being amazing and doing an incredible job. People like John Delancey coming on and being incredible. Regulars, in fact. Discord was around quite a bit. The animation and the art style that to this day still looks incredible. I saw another comment on my last video, and it said that Tell Your Tale looked better than early G4. Not even close. That's like just not even true. Their movements may have been more fluid, but the way it looked, the art style and the animation, it's not even comparable. The music and how good it was, and just how amazing Daniel Ingram is at his job. The characters and the story. Twilight Sparkle is going to go down in history as a very important and affectatious, I don't know if that's the right word, cartoon character. And it's a combination of all of these things that pretty much makes it to where G4 will never be replicated. And there's one more thing that I think people don't really think about that makes G4 pretty much impossible to replicate. So Generation 1 of My Little Pony came out in 1986, which is a long time ago. And with it coming out, it was a girls' show. It was not. This is back in the day when we had girls and boys shows. We had stuff like G.I. Joe for boys, and we had Transformers for boys, and we had stuff like My Little Pony and Care Bears for girls. It was very, very separated. Generation 2 of My Little Pony wasn't even a show. It was just a toy line in a game. It came out in like 97, I believe. Generation 3 was in 2003. So already for My Little Pony, you already have a long history. That's already what, from 86, 96, 06, 24-ish years before Generation 4 came out. And the thing with My Little Pony is that it completely changed that designation of this is a girls show to this is not just a girls show, this is a show for everyone. And for a show to do that, it has to have a legacy that far back, 20, 25-ish years. And it has to be this successful as Generation 4 was. And just the number of shows we have, like, I mean, I guess you could say, well, Care Bears could possibly do it, but the odds of creating a phenomenon like the Brony fandom and enduring for 9 years, all of this stuff, like, think of something like Hell of a Boss, or think of something like Has Been Hotel. These are going to be popular shows, and it's going to be understandable. You're going to have fans of it, and they're going to be older people. They're going to be like teens and stuff, and it makes sense. My Little Pony, Generation 4, didn't make sense. It made such little sense at the time that newscasts and just various websites and all of these places did entire stories about bronies because of how popular the show had become. And that's not something that can happen often. Will there be fans that are interested in a thing that is not something that is their demographic? Of course. But My Little Pony has been around for ages, and for it to have done that monumental of a shift, so much of a shift that the next generation was wanted to be by a lot of fans of that generation. They wanted Generation 5 to be that same style. That doesn't happen often in, if at all. I can't think off the top of my head, oh, this was a show that was created years and years ago, decades ago, and then they released a generation of it, and it just got an entire fan base that wasn't its demographic, and everyone in, it's not even just America. Like I said, if you look at Cosmia Stash stuff, like this, the pony fandom is, it crosses borders, right? So for this person to say Generation 4 is just a solid show and it wasn't lightning in a bottle, that's just fundamentally wrong. This show, Generation 4, Friendship is Magic, is still, was and is still something incredibly special. And I think that it's for the reasons that I have presented to you, but I'd also like to get input. What do you think was the reason that it was so influential to you and to the people that you knew and to the fans that you know, all of those people now? Why was this show different than all of the other shows? Because, again, you look at something like Bluey, right? Bluey is popular right now, but Bluey is not MLP popular. It's not. It's already too far in for Bluey to ever blow up as much as MLP. And the comparison is only at the point of, oh, older people enjoy this show. It's not an entire fandom that is still to this day having conventions. Friendship is Magic is still having conventions to this day. But yeah, I don't want to rant for too long. Friendship is Magic is special. It's my favorite show of all time. I'm sure that's true of a lot of people. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Bye.